We will next look at the count function. The count function is one of a group of count functions that can be used when you need to total the number of cells in a selected range. The count function's job is to only add up the cells in a selected range that contain numbers. It ignores empty cells or those that contain text. What's nice is that if a number is later added to an empty cell, the function will automatically be updated to include the new data. Let's take a look how that applies to our database example. Looking at our database, one of the items I have on top is number of records in my database. Now this is a very small database, so we can actually count it. We can see there are 9. However, we can use the count function for this, even though I probably would not. And I would type in the following: equals count, parentheses, and then I'd go down a numeric column, and I would then press enter and see that I have 9 in the database, which we counted. Now you have to be careful because, for example, I had a 0 here purposely, but if I took out that 0, watch what happens. It automatically goes to 8. So be careful when you use the count function that it has to have zeros in there if you'd like to count that item. Now, more important to us, really, is not the total number of records in my database, but it's how many are coming, how many are not coming, and how many were invited, how many were not invited. And we're going to discuss now another function which is called countif. The countif function is used to count up the number of cells in a selected range that meet certain criteria. So for example, I could use that right over here if I want to find out how many were invited. So the number that were invited are those that have the Y in that column. Those that were not invited have the N. Let's see how we're going to proceed to do that. What we see on the screen is the formula where it says countif in the cells from H5 to, and I arbitrarily put down H800, if there is a N, which stands for no. And in this particular case, we can see there's 1, 2, 3 that have a no, and that's why you have the number 3. By the same token, how many were invited? Let's take a look how that changes. Just go down 1, and it's exactly the same, except now you have the letter Y, and it adds up how many Y's there are. In this case, there are 6. The other function in there, which we use for coming, we got the number 25. This is just nothing more than the summation of the numbers in those columns. So there are 25 people coming to the birthday party. We also have some related functions that you could use if you feel they are better or easier for you. Just to mention some of them, one is average if, countif. We have count if blank. Let's look at one other function which can be quite useful. It's called sumif. This function adds up things depending on the criteria. For example, you check 4. The first argument, which is the range, is the cell or cells you want to check. The second argument, called the criteria, is what you want to check for. And the third argument, the sum range, are the cells to add up. Let's explain this in relationship to a simple example. Let's say we have a store and we're looking to stock new merchandise. To make it very simple, we have to consider whether we want to order shoes, socks, hats, belts, pajamas, and we made a decision whereby we said, well, let's order shoes, let's not order socks, that's no, and for no, let's not order hats, let's order belts, let's order pajamas. And here would be the value, or how much it's going to cost us to order, and we can put this in with dollar signs, obviously. And what we'd like Excel to do is we'd like to have a total of what it's going to cost us if we order the items which we said yes. So in our case, if we order shoes, that would be 20. If we order belts, it's 35, and pajamas is 65. And we'd like Excel to be able to sum up those three numbers automatically based on the criteria that it sees by the letter Y. By looking at it, we can see that it would be $2,000 and $3,500 and $6,500. This is with the spiffed up version now that I put in the dollar sign. And what would be the result? Well, let's take a look. We see the total cost is $12,000, but how was this obtained? Let's take a look how our sumif function works. If you take a look, we would type in equals sumif, and then it tells us F4 to F8. As we said before, the first term is the range. That's the cell or cells you wish to check. And so we will be checking these, in this case, these 5 cells. Next, we have what is the criteria. Well, we're checking to see if it says yes. And we can check that easily. And finally, we'd like to know what's called the sum range. The sum range are the cells that you're going to be adding up. In this case, these are the 3 cells, and that is why we obtained 12,000. If you decide to change your mind and you now feel, well, I could really spend a few dollars more, let's put in a Y for the socks as well, and let's check our total cost once we do that, and you will see now it jumps to 16,000. And by the same token, if we're spending too much and we decide not to order the pajamas, notice it drops to $9,500. Let's look at another application and an easy way how to remember how the formula works. In this example, we have a number of females and males, and we have their weights. We'd like to add up the weights just for the males, and we can put in the criteria using the sumif function as follows. We can see the formula on top, and it follows the criteria we used before. But let me give you a short way to know how to obtain the information. We can say it means the following. Let's sum up E7 to E12, which represents the weights, and we are going to sum that up only if the gender in cells C7 to C12 is male. And we can see we have altogether 2 males, and it sums up to be 377. To put together 2 functions to see how you get the male average, here's one way of doing it. The male average is equal to E18, which is 377, divided by countif. If you remember that function, let's count if there is a male in cell C7 to C12. And altogether there are 2 of them. So what we are doing, the net effect is we're dividing 377 by 2 in order to obtain 188.5 pounds.